Introducing a new video series, 30-second photo critique. Hey everyone, Greg Cazillo from Cazillo.com. Welcome to Keep Shooting Monday number 57. Last week I put up four videos in a new series called 30-second photo critique. Let me know in the comments what you think, because I'm hoping to continue this video series for a while. Basically, I grab some photos, usually out of the forum or from if somebody would have tweeted them to me, which is the two places you can send them to me. And then I do a quick 30-second critique and rate them from 1 to 10. The next photo assignment will be long exposure. Putting an extra spin on it this time. Photos must have an exposure of 1 second or more. It must be posted to the forum by March 7th at 5 p.m. Eastern. Also, don't forget photos taken before today are not eligible. Nikon and Ricoh released a few new rugged cameras this week. The Ricoh cameras used to be labeled under the Pentax name. I've actually had experience with the older Pentax models. I have to say it's actually a pretty good little point-and-shoot camera and some good video features too, especially when you're a dusty or watery, I'm not sure if that's a word or not, environment. Sigma also released a new camera called the DP2. It has interchangeable lenses and a DX sensor. Its claim to fame is 4 sensor layers set to capture different color wavelengths in each separate layer. It has a cool, odd new form factor, which is kind of weird. Looks a little small for someone with big paws like I have, but probably would be fine for most people. Petapixel has a few rumors about the iPhone's new camera specs. In my opinion, a smartphone's camera will always be limited if the company doesn't allow the user to set their own exposure modes. I took this photo the other day after the ice storm in Pennsylvania. I just wish I could have adjusted the exposure a little to get more or less detail depending upon my mood and what I wanted to create. Not in just in this photo, but in a lot of different photos. HDR mode I think is a step in the right direction in the iPhone, but I've just found a lot of situations where the photos are not what I wanted because of those poor exposure choices by the automatic camera exposure. If they ever open up the Photos app on the camera app on the smartphone so that we can control it, I think the photos will get a lot better. DIYphotography.net posted this article about kit lenses. They reminded us that any lens can create a great photograph, and it's really up to the photographer to create it with whatever equipment they have. The main problem with kit lenses is the variable aperture. Learning or remembering that the aperture changes when you zoom in or zoom out takes experience that most beginners do not have. I've tutored many beginning photographers and not one has ever understood that from the get-go. This is why I'd rather see camera kits come with a straight f4 or 5.6 lenses, and I never recommend a variable aperture lens for a beginner. Nikon, Sony, and Fuji have lens rebates going on right now, so if you're in the market for a new lens, it's a good time to pick one up. F-Stoppers posted a video about a new sensor cleaning tool. It's supposed to clean your sensor very easily with only this little gel stick thing that pulls dust away from your sensor without any residue. In their article, they link to a site that isn't shipping it for another month. From what I can tell, I found the same stick on Amazon for half the price, so here's the link. I bought one today and will let you know how it works. In last week's show, someone asked me where I got the iPad mount that I was showing. It's actually a cheap little $25 model that I got on eBay, shipped out of China. It's called the ishot G7 Pro. I'll send a link over to their store. I'm not sure if they still have them available, but I'll try to find a link to it. Basically, it's only this part, just the mount part, and then right back in here, you actually have a 1/4-20 mount that allows you to go to a tripod or whatever else. Then you just take it and you mount it to some kind of a magic arm or something like that. This is actually my magic arm, which I could mount it to, but lately I've been using this Camera Tough Arm, which again, I'll put a link to it in the article or in the YouTube description, which is a really good arm. They're really strong. I found it to be a little bit stronger than the Magic arms, at least the older one that I have here. And so it's an interesting, it's a you know, nice little way to hold it up. Then you can either mount it directly into a super clamp like this onto a stand, or basically on anything that I want. The reason why I was interested in this is because I'm working on a review of the trigger trap, and I needed a way to be able to set it off wirelessly for doing some tests and that kind of thing. And so I basically wanted to be able to connect either the iPad directly to the camera, you know, if it's sitting on a tripod, or the iPhone. Well, this mount is a little bit too big for the iPhone. It doesn't work. So what I actually did was, and let me take this back apart, I had this mount laying around, which about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, the suction cup on it finally gave out. This is just one of those $20 mounts that you get from to hold up your GPS or your iPhone in the car. And I cut the suction cup off and then took this bracket that I already had, this mount that I already had, and stuck it in there and tightened it down, and it works great. I basically just stuff that I already had sitting around, just cut it apart and made it work. And then I can put my phone in there and clamp it down, and then clamp that to the tripod or to a stand, and then I have another remote and I can connect them remotely. It works really, really well. So so far so good. The one thing that I did end up doing with this camera, or I'm sorry, not with the camera, with the mount, is I ended up putting a larger knob on it. This knob right here, the knobs are small, and since it had that small knob, it didn't have enough torque to be able to tighten it down really nice and tight. And so I ended up getting a bigger knob. Actually, at first I had to get a different size nut to put in there, or bolt to put in there, because they're metric bolts and metric knobs. So around here, I can never seem to find a metric knob. So I switched it over to a standard set. And so it's a 1/4-20 at there, and then it's a 1/4-20 knob that I put on there. Bigger knob gives me more torque and allows me to tighten down a little better. Also, I added some washers on each of those, once again making it better, making it easier to tighten it down nice and tight, because when I was playing with it, it just didn't feel like it was really nice and solid and stable. So it's a cheap mount, $20, and I rigged it with some stuff that I already had around. So that's what made it worthwhile and work. You could probably just take this and sit it right on a tripod, mount it right on a tripod if you really wanted to, right on that tripod head or right on a quick release head, and it would probably work just fine. How do you get your sky so blue? Are you using a circular polarizing filter, or is it because the time of the day of shooting? Would you recommend a polarizing filter? I'm afraid of the effects it'll do to the skin. Thanks. I recommend doing some testing with and without a polarizing filter. Also, I did this video a while back, I have no idea when, that talked about how to get blue skies in your photos and what gives you that nice blue sky with or without a filter, so check that video out. Comment to my 50mm prime lens is not a portrait lens. It actually is suitable for portraits. If you can't make it work, then it's your fault, not the lens, or no the lens. LR takes all the distortion away. Couple problems with this comment. Number one, it seems the person just wants to place the blame back on to someone else, saying you're using the equipment wrong, where in my opinion, and the way that I worded that video is, it's the label portrait, quote unquote, that I'm disagreeing with when it is put on a 50mm lens, not saying that you can't use a 50 for a portrait. Nowhere did I say that you cannot use a 50mm for a portrait. That's wrong. So that's the first part of that. The second part, where him or her, don't know if it's him or her, said, well, in Lightroom you can fix all the distortion. Well, there's two problems there. Number one, it can fix all the distortion just because of the angle. You're not going to be able to flatten that image and flatten it so that it is a pleasing headshot when you're shooting it with a 50mm. And two, why are you relying so much on software to fix your inadequacies in your photographs? You need to spend the time to get the good light, to work on it, to improve your photographs and create them in the camera, and then use software to enhance them a little bit. You got to sit back, you got to wait for the time to get the good image, and then work on it and just enhance it a hair. You can't just rely on software 100% and expect it to give you good software. That's the lazy way out, and my next segment is actually going to talk even more about that. Over on the Buffer blog, they talked about this interesting post from someone else and this image about creativity and knowledge and experience and how they all come together, how they all interconnect. And a couple of really good quotes here that I'm going to read from Steve Jobs back when he was still around, obviously. And let's start with that. Creativity is just connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. That's because they were able to connect the experience they've had and synthesize new things. And the reason they were able to do this is because they've had more experience, or they have thought more about their experiences than other people. Very interesting comment, and that's what a lot of people have actually remarked about Apple, is that they're able to take all of these different parts and pieces and bring it together in such a creative way to make a good product that actually works for a lot of people or works for the masses. And that's how we ended up with the iPhone and the iPad, and you know, the individual things are so good, and they push everyone else in the market to, you know, work hard and to be able to follow them. Otherwise, they won't be selling anything at all. Back to the idea of the knowledge versus experience. This image is a great illustration of knowledge versus experience. As much as I want you guys to become awesome photographers, I can't make you get your butt out of that seat and put your camera in your hand and go out and take a photograph. I say it just about at the end of just about every one of my videos: keep shooting, keep shooting, keep shooting. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that you guys need to get up off your butt and keep going out and shooting. Just because, like this guy was saying here a minute ago, that, you know, you can fix it in Lightroom, that's the lazy way out. You got to be able to spend the time. You got to put the time in. You got to be patient. It's like being a fisherman. You're not going to always catch something every single time you go out. Or if you do catch something, it might be a really small little fish. It might not be, you know, the big trout or the big bass you're looking for. It might just be a little sunny, and that's all you get that day. So you got to spend the time and get the experience. All right. Experience is all about connecting all those different parts and pieces, the knowledge of your aperture and your exposure and the way your camera works, and the light and the direction of light and the time of day to shoot, and how to use your tripod, and you know, how to edit in Lightroom. It's all, the experience is all about putting all those parts and pieces together. Once you have all those together, you can and you start to connect the dots like this illustration shows. That's when you start to be able to create really awesome images, and things just click and the creativity works. And I just can't stress it enough to get out and keep shooting, keep working on it, and that's how you're going to be able to create great photographs. It is not by armchair quarterbacking and just going all through YouTube and commenting and, you know, comment trolling and reading 1,000 blogs, and, you know, that's all well and good, but there is absolutely no replacement for experience and actually doing it and putting the time in. That's the only way that you're going to get a great photograph and be a great creative photographer. So, end of rant for today, for this week. Make sure you check out the 30-second photo critiques. I'm going to be posting them on Tuesday through Friday of this week. Let me know how you like them. And if you don't agree with me, I'd love to hear it there in the comments. Greg Cazillo, Cazillo.com. Thanks, guys. Keep shooting.